Good day to you all. Welcome to Metric Hub. Today I'm going to give a revision on personal training N5. Personal training N5. Right. So let's go to question 1. Right. So let's read together. Various options are given as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the answer and write only the letter A to D next to the question number. 1.1 to 1.10 in the answer box. Right. So let's go to question 1.1. Which term refers to the conscious planning of an employee future? When the organization is planning the employee's future, we call it development. Development, right? Which is A, development, right? Development. Right, let's go to 1.2. Which sector is known to be managed and owned by the state? The state owns what you call public sectors. Public sectors. Those are what you call public corporations. Public corporations. Right. So let's move on to 1.3. 1.3. Right. Which one of the following learning problems occur during the input stage, right? So during the input stage, you can find that learners will have a problem with what? Impaired hearing, which is A, impaired hearing, impaired hearing, right? Let's move on to question 1.4. Which learning principle takes place as a result of repetition and application? You can find that repetition and application, it's for the reinforcement and exercise principle. Reinforcement and exercise principle, which is A. Let's go to number 1.5. Which role of the training practitioner refers to his ability to be a good communication specialist in helping groups, right? The role is what you call a facilitator, group facilitator. Facilitator's role is to be a communication specialist, right, in helping groups to solve problems, right? Let's go to 1.6, right? Which training method is a competitive part that dominates the learning experience, right? Which is a competitive part whereby there is competition, right? You can find that games, there is a win and a loss, right? One part wins and the other part loses. So there's competition to win, right? Games. The training method which has a competitive part that dominates the learning experience. That's what we call games. Games, that's a training method that can facilitate what? Competition, right? So let's move on to the next question. The next question, which is 1.7. Which option is a phase in a lecture, right? There is introduction, body, and conclusion, right? So a lecture can introduce a topic, and then in the body you give an in-depth explanation of points, and you make a conclusion, which is all of the above, which is D. Right. Let's move on to 1.8. Which training media can be used to stick on pictures and used as a display board? We have what you call a whiteboard. Right? A whiteboard, right? Can be used as a media which can be used to stick on pictures and used as a display board, whiteboard, right? Let's move on to 1.9. Which option is an advantage of field exemptions or visits? Field visits. We have what you call an advantage of a field visit is what you call people are learning as a group learning, Group learning, which is A, right? Group learning. Right, let's go to 1.10. Which type of question requires a yes or a no or a specific answer response? That's what you call a factual or a factual question. That's what you call a factual or a factual question, right? So let's move on to question two. Question two, right? Indicate whether the following statements are true or false by writing only true or false next to the question number 2.1 to 2.10 in the answer book. So here we're going to give a yes or a no answer. Right. Let's go to 2.1. 2.1. Urbanization refers to a process where people from rural areas move closer to cities to seek employment. That's what you call urbanization. When people from the rural areas are moving into the cities to seek employment, we call it urbanization. That's a true statement. That's a true statement. Right. Let's go to 2.2. Public corporations are government owned. Yes, that's true. Those are what you call public sectors. Public sectors. They are owned by the government. They are owned by the government. Right. Right. For example, municipalities, they are also public sectors. Right. Municipalities, they are also public sectors. They are owned by the government. Right. Let's go to 2.3. Monitoring can be used where a person has been promoted. Monitoring can be used where a person has been promoted. That's true. A person who has been promoted can be monitored to see if he is working or doing things efficiently and effectively, right? Considering that new position, right? Let's go to 2.4. Adults are dependent on the teacher. That's false. That's false. That's a false statement. That's a false statement. Right. Let's go to 2.5. Effective skills include the ability to deal with ongoing scheduling. Right. That's false. That's false. False. It does not include the ability to deal with the ongoing scheduling. Right. Let's move on to 2.6. 2.6. Warm-up activities help put participants at ease. That's a true statement, right? Warm-up activities whereby maybe small talks, just to create a favorable atmosphere so that the participants will be more relaxed before the actual a learning process, right? So let's move on to question number 2.7, right? 2.7. In basket as a training method can be used in technical and non-technical training. That's a false statement. It cannot be used in technical or non-technical training at the same time. Cannot be used on both. Cannot be used on both. Right. So let's move on to 2.8. Media serves as the base for training to take place. Right. Media act as a base for training. That's a true statement. When we're talking about media, we're talking about tools that can be used to facilitate training. We have medias like whiteboards. We also have objects that can be used for demonstration. We also have pictures, graphs, etc. Those are what we call medias, right? So, 2.9, media does not have to be visible and legible. That's a false statement. They are supposed to be visible, right? They are supposed to be visible so that participants can be able to what? To see them clearly, right? They are supposed to be visible, right? A trainer, 2.10, a trainer seeks questions to draw timid uh, persons into the consideration, right? Right. That's a true statement. That's a true statement. That's a true statement. You can ask questions, right? So that you can draw timid persons into discussions. You can ask questions, right, to facilitate discussions. That's a true statement. Right. Let's go to question 3. Question 3. Right. Question 3. Right. Choose a term from column B that matches a description in column A. Write only the letter A to J next to the question number 3.1 to 3.10. Right. In the answer box. So let's go to 3.1. 3.1. Right. A passive learners. Passive learners. These are what you call children. Passive learners are children, right? And then 3.2, trainees read, study, and analyze a hypothetical business problem. That's what you call a case study, which is E, right? And then 3.3, those who want to work, we call them labor force. Labor force. Those people who are willing to work, right? Let's go to 3.4, ensures the learner remembers more, which is the media. We're talking about pictures. The ensures a person can be able to remember more when learning is accompanied by media. Learners will remember more, right? And then 3.5, listening effectively. 3.5, listening effectively. That's what you call a communication skill. A communication skill. Effective listening. Right. Let's go to 3.6. Accompanied by a notice and distributed to members. That's what you call an agenda. An agenda is accompanied by a notice and it is distributed to members before the what? The meeting date. Right. Right. Let's go to 3.7. A short course of study to explain certain problems. That's what you call a semester or a seminar. A seminar. That's what you call a seminar. A short course to explain certain problems. That's I. So let's move on to 3.8. Right. Helps overcome initial resistance of group work. What can help to overcome initial resistance of group work? What helps to overcome initial resistance of group work? We call it an icebreakers. Icebreakers. Icebreakers, which is D. Right. Right. And then 3.9, different points of view are summarized. Different points of views are summarized. That's what you call paraphrasing. Paraphrasing. Right. And then lastly, question 3.10. Easily produced, compiled, and revised. That's what you call a hard copy. A hard copy, which is G. A hard copy can be easily produced, it can be compiled, and also revised. Right. Let's move on to question 4. Question 4. Choose the correct option from the words in brackets. Write only the answer next to the question number. Right. So 4.1. Intensive production refers to the method of production in which more labor is used in relation to the technology. We call it labor intensive. Labor intensive. Right. And then 4.2. Dash is a form of monitoring to assist a person who is suffering from a problem with self-esteem, confidence, anxiety, etc. We call it counseling. 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 All right. Let's go to 4.3. Dash competencies refers to the knowledge of enterprise structure and functions. We call it economic competencies, which refers to the knowledge of the enterprise and structures and functions. Economic. Right. Let's go to question 4.4. Dash exercises are primarily used to predict future managerial potentials. That's what you call in basket, right? Exercises, right? And then question 4.5, Dash aims to develop interpersonal, social, and communication skills, which is what you call a role plays. Role plays. And then 4.6, Dash media are relatively expensive, right? That's what you call interactive media. They are very expensive, right? 4.7, Dash is training media are realistic since it is three-dimensional, which is what you call models. Is training media are realistic since it is three-dimensional. Right. Let's go to 4.8. Dash questions cannot be answered with a yes or a no, which is what you call an open-ended questions. Open questions. You need to give an in-depth explanation. In-depth explanation. Right. 4.9. Dash is a series of lecturers. Sorry, Dash is a series of lectures uh, presented by various experts. That's what you call a course, a course, a course, right? Lastly, 4.10. In a Dash arrangement, all participants are equal and open communication can take place. That's what you call a circle, in a circle arrangement, in a circle arrangement, in a circle arrangement, right? Right, let's go to section B. Section B. Section B. Let's go to section B. Section B. Right. Here you are supposed to answer 4 questions from this section, but as the revision is concerned, we are going to answer all questions. I'm going to answer all questions. Section B. Section B. Right. So let's go to 5.1. 5.1. Right. So right there, following acronyms in full. 5.11. 5.11. What is ABET? ABET stands for Adult Basic Education and Training. Adult Basic Education and Training. ABET. Right. 5.12. SAQA. It stands for South African, right, Qualification Association. South African Qualification Association. Sorry, authority. Authority, not association. Correct that one. Right. Right, let's go to 5.13, SETA. SETA stands for sector, education, sector, education, and training authorities. That's SETA. Sector, education, and training authority. Right. Let's move on to question 5.2. 5.2. 5.2. 5.2. 5.2. Right. It reads, name any three learning problems that can occur during the throughput stage or phase. You can find that there are problems like poor short-term memory, can occur. Problems like poor long-term memory, problems like not enough information, and incorrect association. These are the problems that can occur during the throughput phase. Right. Let's go to 5.3. List any four technical competencies that a trainer needs to be effective. Right. We are going to list technical competencies that the trainer needs for him to be effective. Right. A trainer has to have 5.3. 5.3. 5.3. A trainer needs to have adult skills, adult training skill, adult training skill. A trainer has to have audio-visual skill. Supposed to have audio-visual skills, right? Suppose this is the ability to use audio and visuals during the training process. Are supposed to also have interactive skills, whereby you should have the skills to interact with the learners or the participants, right? It's supposed to have a subject matter skills, the ability to know the subject matter skills, the ability to know the subject, right? And knowledge of and the use of the training method. The use of the training method. Supposed to have these skills. The use of the training methods. Right. So let's go to 5.4. 5.4. 5.4. Right. Discuss 4 M's of in-basket exercise is a training method. So we're going to discuss, right? So I'm just going to give points, right? In a discuss and then you can be able to discuss. So in your discussion, you're supposed to include this training is used for, it is used for, it is used for predicting future managerial potentials. Used for predicting future managerial potentials. It is used to identify who has a potential to become a manager. All right. Who has potential to become a manager. Right? So they are predicting, right? And then it is also used to select, to develop and place individuals in management. Used to select, develop, and place individuals in management. It is used to select people who can be part of the management. And also, it is used for needs analysis. It is used for needs analysis, whereby we are analyzing or we are identifying which are the needs of individuals for training. And also, it teaches decision-making skills. It teaches decision-making skills. It teaches decision-making skills. Right. Right. Let's move on to question 5.5. 5.5. 5.5. 5.5. Right. It reads, media, equipments, and materials are used frequently during the training to facilitate the learning process. Right. The question reads, briefly give a distinction between the following categories of what? Of media. So we are going to give a distinction. We are going to distinguish between these categories of training. Right. So you can find that facilities, those are the physical environment. A facility, it's a physical environment whereby you're talking about classroom, computer room, etc. Physical environment or physical space. This is what we call physical space. A classroom. A classroom is a physical space. It is used during the training process. Right, let's move on to equipments. Equipments are those things that are going to be used in the what? In the training process. We have computers. We have blackboards, whiteboards. Those are the equipments. Computers, whiteboards, blackboards, etc. Right, those are what we call equipments. Electronic board, projectors, etc. And then materials. Materials includes the expandables, right? Items used. For example, we have the marker, expandables. Those are what we call expandables. Those are ones that can be used up. These can be used up. They are expandables. They can be finished. So we're talking about markers, whiteboard markers, chalks, etc. They can be used up. And then media, we'll be talking about aids used in to facilitate training. Aids used to facilitate training. Right, that's what we call media, right? So we have aids like charts, right? We have aids like charts, diagrams, pictures. Those are what we call media. Right. Let's go to question 5.6. 5.6. 5.6. Right. Describe how you could describe how you would handle or control the following situation during training. A trainee has difficulty in expressing himself. How are you going to handle or control this situation whereby a trainee has difficulty in expressing himself, right? So what you do is one, you can repeat what he has said, starting with the word, correct me if I'm wrong. But as you were saying, right, 5.6, 5.6, right, repeat what he said, starting with words like correct me if I am wrong, or but you were saying, hence you'll be able to, the trainee will be able to express himself better, right? And then question 5.7, question 5.7, right? Briefly define a workshop, right? We're going to define what is a workshop, right? A workshop is a gathering of people to discuss and solve problems. That's what we call a workshop. When people are gathered to discuss or to solve a problem, that's what we call a workshop. Gathering of people to discuss and solve a problem. That's what you call a workshop, right? So you can find that during a workshop, participants do not listen to speakers, but divide into groups from the start, right? Participants do not listen to the speaker, but rather divide into groups from the start. They divide into groups. So they are gathering to discuss matters. All right. So let's move on to question. This is question 5.7. Question 5.7, right? So let's move on to the next question. Right. Question 6. Question 6. Examine. Right. Question 6.1. Examine the following illustration, then briefly differentiate between the following terms. Right. So you need to what? To examine, and then we give a difference between these terms. Right. So what is a labor market? Labor market is the availability of people in the community who have the competence or skills to 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 occupy specific positions. Labor market. 6.1. A group of people in the community who have the competencies to occupy vacant positions within an organization. Right. Vacant positions within an organization. That's what we call what? Labor market. Labor market. Right. Let's go to 6.12. Right. Skilled labor. Right. So these are the part of the labor force, part of the labor force who possesses specific skills or certain skills. That's what you call skilled labor force to do the job, right, that they have been employed. Right, let's go to 6.13. Unskilled labor. These are part of what? A part of the labor force. The labor force who do not possess skills to be employed in certain positions. Right. That's what you call unskilled labor. Let's move on to question 6.2. 6.2. Indicate whether each professional to whom you would refer the trainees below to so that they can be assisted with their learning problems. Indicate each professional to whom you would refer the trainees below so that they can be assisted in their training problems, right? So a person who has question 6.21, 6.21, right? Trainees have problem with reading, writing, and arithmetics. Here you are going to go refer him to remedial teachers. I met your teachers, right? So that you can be taught how to read, how to write, right? And then 6.21, sorry, 6.22, right? Trainees who have problems with concentration and absorption of information due to lack of coordination in brain. We're supposed to send them to a occupational therapist. Occupational therapist. They need to go to a therapist, occupational therapist, right? 6.23. Trainees who have problems with speech and hearing defects are supposed to go take them to a speech therapist. Speech therapist or a therapist. You have to go to, you are supposed to refer them to a speech therapist, right? Let's go to question 6.3. 6.3. Right. Series name 4 intellectual competencies an effective trainer needs. Here we are going to talk about intellectual competencies. Intellectual competencies. So a trainer is supposed to have cognitive skills, which is what you call reasoning, right? And then affective skills. Supposed also to have observation skills. That ability to what? To observe learners, and also intrapersonal skills. Intrapersonal skills. Ability to communicate with himself, right? Which is internal communication. Okay, I'm going to move on to question 6.4. 6.4, right. Discuss 4 advantages of demonstrations as a training method, right? What are the advantages of demonstration as a training method? Advantages of demonstration as a training method. You can find that demonstration allows skills to be used immediately. Allows skills to be used immediately. Allows skills to be used immediately. Right. And also it can be used in technical and non-technical training. It can be used in technical and non-technical training. It can be used in technical and non-technical training. Right. It can also be it can also reduce the gap between theory and practice. It reduces the gap between theories and practice. Right? And you can also find that demonstrations are relatively cheap. They are relatively cheap. They are relatively cheap. They are relatively cheap. right? They are relatively cheap, and the trainees remain involved since they will be asked to demonstrate. So, or maybe they will be watching the demonstration. So trainees, they active, remain active. They are remaining involved in the learning process, right? Let's move on to question 6.5. 6.5, right? 6.5, name four advantages of actual objects as a media. Actual objects. What are the advantages of actual objects? Right. 6.5, right? So we can find that they stimulate more than one sense. The actual objects stimulates more than one sense, and also it makes demonstration more easier. Makes demonstration more easier. Demonstrations more easier. So it will be very easy to demonstrate when you're using the actual object. And also, you can find that it is realistic. It creates a realistic situation. A realistic situation. And also, it gives learners an opportunity to learn, to practice. Opportunity for learners to practice. Opportunity for learners to practice. Right. These are also another advantages, right? So let's move on to question 6.6. Briefly describe two reasons for asking questions during training. Why do facilitators ask questions during training? Right. So facilitators ask questions during training. One of the reasons is to check understanding, to check if the trainees understood the question, or if they have understood the explanation. They also want to facilitate what you call prompt discussion, to prompt discussions. They want to prompt discussions. And also, questions are asked to involve learners, in the learning process, to involve learners in the training process, right? And also to stimulate trainees' interest, to stimulate trainees' interest. And lastly, to draw the timid or raw, quiet person into the discussion. To draw the timid or a quiet person into the discussion. Right. Okay, let's move on to question 6.7. Describe two advantages of the traditional seating arrangement. Advantages of the traditional seating arrangement. Right. So we can find that participants are not distracted. There is no distraction. Participants are not distracted. And also, participants can all see the trainer and the visual aids. Can all see the trainer and the visual aids. Right. And also another advantage is of a traditional sitting. Trainers is in control. Right. A trainer is in control. Trainer is in control. Trainer is in control since the focus is on him. He's the one who is the focal point. Right. Since the focus is on him. So you'll be having full control of the what? Of the class. And lastly, formal tuition can take place. Formal tuition can take place. Right. So let's move on to another question, which is question 7. Question 7. Question 7. 7.1. Let's go to 7.1. Right. 7.1. Right. Study the scenario below and answer the questions. There are people who are busy on the field, and then there's this machine that is producing cars. This is machine, this is labor. Right. These are people who are working, and these are the labor. Right. Sorry, machine production. Right. Let's go to question 7.11. Question 7.11. Right. Differentiate between labor-intensive production. Labor-intensive production refers to the production method whereby more labor is used in relation to available technology. Here, more labor is used, right, compared to what? To technology. Right, labor. Right. More labor is used compared to technology. And then 7.12, capital intensive production is which is a production whereby more capital is invested in the use of what? Technology and equipments for production. More capital is used, right, to invest in technology, and equipment. Equipments. It means to say production is through what? Is through machines or technology. Use of machines, like what is happening in, I can call it what? Picture A and B. So picture B, that's what you call capital intensive production, because technology is the one that is used in production, right? And then labor intensive production, which is what? Picture A, whereby labor is used compared to technology, right? So let's go to question 7.2. 7.2. Discuss three difference between adults and children as learners, right? We are going to differentiate between adults and learners, right? We're going to differentiate between adults and learners. So adults and children as learners, between adults and children as learners. So when we are asked to differentiate, you are supposed to make sure that you put a what? A table, right? Right, so that you can be able to differentiate. So here are adults. We're gonna mention adults here, and these are children, right? So you can find that adults are self-directing. They don't need to be directed. Self-directing. Adults are self-directing. They are self-directing, right? As well as the children, they are dependent on the teacher. They depend on the teacher. Children depends on the teacher, right? And you can find that adults do not want to be told what to do. They do not want to be told what to do, right? And children, they expect to be told. They expect to be told what to do, right? And then you can find that adults are actively involved in the learning, actively involved in the learning. But children are passively involved. Children are passively involved. So that's the difference between children and adults, right? So let's move on to question 7.3. Question 7.3. 7.3. 7.3. Explain the training practitioner's role or task. So we are going to explain what is the task, the role of what? Of the training practitioner, right? Or the task of the training practitioner, right? So the training practitioner should be able to use and apply all possible training methods, right? Right. The method specialist supposed to be is able to use all possible training methods, all possible training methods Right. Right. And also it's supposed to be proactive. Should be proactive, right? And creative. It's supposed to be proactive and creative, right? Let's go to 7.32. This one says 7.31. 7.32, supervisor of a training program. We are still on the what? On the training practitioner's task as a supervisor of a training program, right? So as a supervisor of a training program, what is he supposed to do? Supposed to ensure that training takes place as planned. Should ensures that training takes place as planned. Supposed to make sure that training takes place as planned and within a planned time span, within a planned budget and also time span. Right. Okay, let's move on to question 7.4. 7.4. 7.4. 7.4. Question 7.4. Right. Name four examples of warming up exercises that can be used during training. 8 marks. Examples of warming exercises. Warming up exercises. Right. So these are examples of warming up exercises whereby they can use the paper tower alphabetical introduction, balloon games, animal crackers. They can also do moving the plane or the piano, house and garden. There's a warming up phase, right? They can also use the paper tower, and also use balloon games. They do balloon games as a warm-up. Animal crackers. They can also use what you call tin foil relay, and also the alphabetical introduction. Just to make learners more relaxed. That might encourage learning, right? Let's move on to 7.5. 7.5. 7.5. Name 4 advantages of using printed material as learning media. Printed material. We're talking about printed material. We're talking about newspapers, magazines, etc. 7.6. Sorry, 7.5. 7.5. Right. So what are the advantages of using those materials? They are cheap, Sometimes, for example, newspapers are very free. Sometimes they are free. They are portable. You can be able to carry them, right? And also they are reliable. You can get them anyway. They are also durable. They are also durable. You can find that sometimes they are no, they do not have to have batteries that needs to be replaced. And you can find that does not blow fuse. No blow fuse. And also, learners can control their pace of learning. Learners can control their pace of learning. They can control their pace of learning when they are using printed materials, right? Let's go to 7.6. 7.6. 7.6. 7.6. Right. Briefly differentiate between direct questions, right? We want to differentiate between direct questions. Question 7.61, right? Direct questions are questions that are directed to a specific individuals, put up to a specific person, or individual, right? And then 7.62, which is we are differentiating between direct and indirect questions. Indirect questions are put up to a group, put to the group, not to the individual. Put to the group, right? In general, not specific individual is required to answer that question, right? In general, right? Let's go to 7.7. Briefly discuss what a booze job entails, right? A booze job, what does it say? What is it all about? Right, 7.7, right? So those are small teams of participants who take part in team task to reach a decision or a recommendation or to share with other groups, right? These ones is a team, a small team of participants who take part in team task, who take part in team task, in team, not team, in team task, right? Who take part in team task, right? To reach a decision. To reach a decision, to reach a decision or a recommendation. Right. To share with other groups. Right. Right. Let's move on to Question 8. Question 8. Question 8. Right. Study the message. Study the image below and answer the questions that follow. Right. 6.8.1. Right. So what is happening here? There is rules, regulations, court permits, policies, criminals, implied, federal safety, social reforms, environment enforcement, etc. Right. So list any three relevant acts business needs to know about. Yeah. Right. Regarding with the what? The relevant to the what? To the image below. Right. So we have acts like uh, employment equity, employment equity act. Another act is what we call labor relations. Relations Act of 1995. There is another act which is an employment, Basic Conditions of Employment Act. Basic Conditions of Employment Act, right? We also have unemployment insurance. Insurance. And skills development. Skills development. Right. And then let's go to question 8.2. 8.2. Name 6 learning principles a trainer needs to keep in mind when planning an intervention. 6 learning principles. 6 learning principles. Right. So, you're supposed to learn how to motivate the learners. Motivation. Suppose also to learn how to principles of uh, learning by doing, learn by doing principle, right? Suppose also to keep in mind principles like learning motor skills, learning motor skills. Also have principles like trial and error, and error. There are principles like multisensory, skills or input. There are skills like on space, there are skills like individual differences. There are skills like enforcement, reinforcement, 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 and exercise. Right, so there are many skills, right? Another one to add, there's also what we call contingence skill. setting of objectives, etc. So I think we have done justice to question 8.2. Let's go to 8.3. 8.3, right? It says, briefly explain two communication skills a trainer needs as part of his or her interpersonal competencies. Now, here we're going to talk about what? We're going to explain two training skills. Two training skills, right? 8.3. 8.3. 8.3, right? We have listening attentively or effectively, listening effectively, which is also a communication skill. Listen effectively. 2, we have asked questioning effectively. Questioning effectively. Ability to influence a group to coherence. Ability to influence. Ability to influence the group. To influence a group to cohesive, right? And also presenting a course to ultimately reach objectives. Right. Let's go to question 8.4. 8.4. 8.4. Question 8.4. Explain any 4 disadvantages of the lecture and lesson method. Disadvantages. 4 disadvantages of this method, lecture and lesson method. Right. 1, you can find that lectures limit participations of what? Of learners. Lectures limits participations of learners. 2, you can find that it is not always to get, it is not always possible to get what? Feedback from learners. Not always possible. To get feedback. And also you can find that trainers must have excellent communication skills. Trainers must have communication skills for it to be effective. And also, it does not follow the adult learning principles. It does not follow the adult learning principles. You can also find that trainers must do complete preparations for it to be effective. Trainers must do complete preparation. They should prepare completely. Right. So let's move on to question 8.5. Question 8.5. Discuss 4 advantages of a clip charts as a media. Clip charts. Sorry. Advantages of a flip chart. A chart whereby one can write on and flip it when it's full. A flip chart. What are the advantages of using a flip chart? Which is question 8.5. 8.5. 8.5. You can find that it is cheap. It is cheap to buy. Very cheap to buy. And you can find that it is readily available. And also flip charts can be used to stick pictures. Flip charts can also be used throughout a learning process. It can be used throughout the learning process. The learning process. Right. And lastly, information will be built step by step. Information can be built step by step. Can be built step by step. And lastly, it is used for key points. It is used for key points. Right. Let's move on to let's move on to 8.6. Briefly describe the two disadvantages of loaded questions. We are going to give disadvantages of loaded questions. Disadvantages of loaded questions, which is 8.6. 8.6. Right. One, you can find that loaded questions can put the trainee on the defensive. It puts the trainee on the defensive. And also, trainees ends up the trainee will end up feeling trapped and not consulted. End up feeling trapped. Right. Right. Let's move on to question 8.7. 8.7. Right. Briefly describe a convention. A convention, it is the gathering of delegates from different enterprises with the aim of reaching some kind of what? Of an agreement which is acceptable to all on a specific what? Subject, a convention. Uh, when experts are gathering, right? Or delegates. When delegates from different enterprises or companies to to reach an agreement on a specific subject. On a specific subject. That's what we call a convention. Right? When delegates from different companies meet to reach an agreement. Right. Okay, let's move on to the last question. The last question. The last question. Right. Question 9. Question 9. Question 9. 9. Right. 9.1. Right. So study the image below and answer the question from NQF, National Qualifications Framework. Various training bodies are organizations which deliver learning programs that culminate in specified uh, national qualifications framework standards of qualifications. Right. Question 9.1, briefly discuss three NQF implications. NQF. NQF simply means the National Qualifications Framework. So we're going to discuss three national qualifications frameworks. Right. The first one that we are going to implications. Right. They want to make sure that the process make the process learner-centered. They want to make sure that the process is learner-centered. To make the process learner-centered, right? And also they want to acknowledge that all learning is done for a purpose. To acknowledge that all learning is for a purpose. It also wants to learn from the learner's point of view. And also to make sure that our qualifications internationally accepted. To make our qualifications internationally accepted or acceptable. And lastly, to recognize that much learning takes place outside the formal education system. Right. So let's move on to 9.2. 9.2. 9.2. 9.2. Right. Name 3 individual learning styles is identified by Hani and Mumford. We are supposed to name 3 individual learning systems, right? We have what you call activist, we have reflectors, we have theorists, and pragmatics. Pragmatistics. Right. Right. Let's move on to question 9.3. Name 4 elements of the system approach to training. Elements to system approach to training. Right. Elements to system approach to training. We have what we call input phase. Is also what we call process phase. There is what you call output phase and feedback phase. Right. So let's move on to 9.4. Name the 3 stages of lecture and lesson method. Stages of lecture and lesson method. Right. So I'm going to list stages, which is 9.4. Right. We have what we call an introduction, whereby there's an introduction that is given, and then development stages, which is body, which is also a development stage, and lastly, a conclusion. Conclusion, which is a summary stage. Summary stage. This is what we call a development stage. Right. Let's move on to 9.5. 9.5. Give a synonym for warming up exercise. a serum for warming up exercise, right, which is 1, icebreakers, there is another one which is called energizers, 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 and then attention switchers, attention switchers, and introductions. Right. Let's go to 7.9.6. 9.6. 9.6. Sound media can be used frequently during training to effectively facilitate the learning process. Briefly explain any 4 disadvantages of a sound media. Right. We are on 9.6. You can find that cannot be easily reversed, or revised. Cannot be easily revised. And also, it does not have the potential of what? Of learning. It does not have the potential of learning. Of learning. 3, you can find that feedback is not possible. And also they need to be cleaned and maintained. Right. Let's go to question 9.7. Describe how you would handle or control the following situation during training. A trainee monopolies, a trainee monopolizes the training session. How can you control a trainee monopolizing the training session? Right. You're supposed to acknowledge the contribution, and also you're supposed to suggest to the trainee that the group could learn from different points of view. You're supposed to make sure that if that individual continues to speak, if the person speaks continuous, quietly speak to him or her alone during breaks. Right. So you need to acknowledge his contribution. First, suggest that the group could learn from different opinions. and talk to him alone. Maybe during breaks. If he keeps on speaking, if he could not be quiet, right? Let's move on to the last question. Briefly describe 4 facts about a meeting. 4 facts about a meeting. Right. So a meeting is a get-together whereby interested parties or persons take part in it. And a meeting can be a public or a private, right? A private meeting, which is only members can attend. It can be a public meeting whereby individuals or group or public can be invited, right? Right. So, which is 9.8. 9.8. Right. So, meeting are get-togethers where individuals, where interested persons, they meet and discuss, take part in it, take part in it. They are private and public meetings. A private meeting, only members are invited. Only members are invited, and public meeting, everyone is invited. And meetings are organized by the secretary and the chairperson. Meetings are organized by a secretary and chairperson. Right. So I've managed to answer all questions, 9 questions. Right. So thank you so much for your time. Please do not forget to share. Do not forget to like the video, as it will give me chance to bring more content. So do not also forget to subscribe if it's your first time to be in this channel. Have a good day.